Wagwan, everybody. Welcome to the Rediscovering History podcast, where we'll be speaking about history and as well family history and how history relates in terms of Caribbean people for the present as well as in the past, and how in the past, what that does and brings forth for what we are going through at present and what we can learn from our history, from our family, and take that moving forward. So I do hope you enjoy the podcast. And if you like it, please ensure to subscribe, like, and review. Thank you. So thank you so much for coming on to the podcast, Rediscovering History. And this is going to be starting in season 9, episode 2. And we're talking to Natalie Preddie in regards to Beyond the Resort. This is her new show that is on YouTube, and I'll link that in the show notes below, as well to discuss in terms of looking at tourism, but as well looking beyond the resort, meaning that looking at things in terms of a cultural history and as well to know things that are outside of what are just regularly the norm. So before we start, I'll have Natalie here, who is in person, to just do a brief introduction before we start.
Hello. Thank you for having me, Wendy. My name is Natalie Preddie. I am a travel journalist and TV host. So I write for whoever will pay me, but anyone from National Geographic, Washington Post, Travel and Leisure, I write for quite a bit. And then I am the travel expert, although is anyone an expert, on breakfast television as well. So I work there. And yeah, I've really been over the past few years focused on the Caribbean, and my family's from Jamaica, and found myself drawn home, if you will, and really looking into family history and how that affects everyone in the Caribbean, and of course, specifically, as you mentioned, with tourism, and how do we ensure tourism remains culturally sustainable as well as economically and environmentally sustainable.
Absolutely. So, what inspired you to create Beyond the Resort? Because was it an idea because of just travel, or is it just to explore, have people explore what is beyond just the resort?
I was really sick of everyone looking at the Caribbean through one homogenous, narrow lens. And, everyone thinks, oh, I'm in the Caribbean, I'm in Jamaica, Bob Marley, Jamaican smile. I'm like, no, listen, I am so sick of this. This is a place with so much rich culture, deep culture, a global history. And this island itself has, diaspora is everywhere and have inspired music in, reggae, hip hop, rap, everything has come out of this little island, and people just look at it like, an all-inclusive resort. And then all of these other islands, St. Kitts and Grenada and Barbados, they're so different. Right. And I grew up knowing that they are different. A Bajan accent sounds different than a Jamaican accent, sounds different than a Trini accent, right? And so I really wanted to show people how amazing these islands are and how vibrant they are beyond what they think they know about an island from the lens of their usually internationally owned resort.
Yeah, exactly. Because, many travel shows focus on, of course, the luxury and the beaches. Why was it important for you to tell a different type of story about travel?
I think we are also in a period as travelers where we are looking for something deeper. We are looking for experiences and immersions that teach us something new. We know that historical ancestry-based travel is up as well. And so, and again, I was just annoyed. I was just annoyed with hearing it, people saying they know a country. I think I was somewhere, and there was a couple that heard me talking about Jamaica, and they said, oh, we went to Jamaica and everyone was so nice, and this guy did this and this guy did and I just heard them, and it really bugged me because I thought you've been to Jamaica 5 times, so you say, but you haven't been to Jamaica. You don't know. You don't know about this country at all. And I feel as though we are in a place now where people may be a bit more open to listen. I also think there are more tourism offerings
Yes.
from within community tourism
Mhm.
in the islands. And yeah, I felt like, it was time to take all of my work has taken me to such amazing places. I know which places I feel good in and where I feel less comfortable. And I felt like, okay, I've done all of these amazing things and met these amazing people, but now I have to use this platform for good.
Yes.
And, if I am lucky enough to have made it where people will let me speak, I need to speak with a cause and on something that hopefully will have an impact.
No, absolutely, because what you just mentioned, that couple going to Jamaica 5 times and retelling something that is totally foreign.
Yes.
So, I guess that's the reason why I guess you are reclaiming and retelling these Caribbean stories,
Yes.
and why is that very important?
I think for me, for my family, for the my ancestors who didn't get their stories
Yeah.
told, who weren't able to speak, who are not gonna be remembered, and they need to be remembered. I think for them, I remember seeing this T-shirt that said, "I am my ancestors' wildest dreams," and I think I am so lucky to be able to speak like this, and I need to give them a voice,
Mhm.
and I think that's ultimately what it comes down to.
Yeah, it's as they say in Jamaica, it's your inner man or inner woman
Yes,
that you're
yes,
talking
yes.
that you're talking to that is at least driving you to walk down this path
Yeah.
for that. And, you're naming your phrase, "Beyond the resort." Why do you suggest that it gives a deeper meaning to things?
The title, Beyond the Resort?
Mm.
Again, I remember being at a resort, and they had these walls up,
Mhm.
and people were not encouraged to leave, and that really bothered me
Yeah,
because I wanted to say, "But if you go beyond these resort walls, this is the country you are visiting."
yeah.
And I think that's what inspired it because I wanted people, I felt like it was somewhat relatable for when
Yes.
those people did go beyond the resort, the world that was waiting for them.
Exactly, because, I've seen it on the North Coast where they have at one point, I went it's a very large hotel, and one year, they didn't have a fence. The next year I went, they had a fence coming down on the beach to show a physical line divide
Yeah.
between who was on the resort and who was on just the regular beaches, which is just the common person, so to
Yeah.
speak, right?
Yeah.
So that in itself is a lot right there. But again, I get what you're saying in terms of being able to show a different side and to make that more relatable to people to know that there is a community, there is a culture, there are people here that you can learn from and know something about it and not be fearful,
Absolutely.
right? And, for you, can you just share a moment when you're filming that has been kind of more memorable for you in terms of showing beyond the resort?
Yeah. So one of my favorites actually is in St. Lucia and around Gros Piton, there
Mm.
is a community called Font Jean Libre, which is the land of the free. And how it started was, a few hundred years ago, there were some enslaved that escaped their plantations and started this free community, which is around the base of the mountain. And, they've gone through some economic
Mhm.
issues and, again, cultural sustainability. But now they have this program where only people from that community can lead guests up the mountain. So you have to have a guide from that community. So your money is
Mhm.
going directly
Yeah.
into this community. And I thought, oh my goodness, what a fantastic example of sustainability in so many facets. Culturally, this group is able to celebrate, what their ancestors did. They said, no, no more, and created this, and, we're able
Mhm.
to create this free community. And they're also able to be self-sustainable when it comes to food, when it comes to money, when it comes to education. They are able to continue this community and celebrate what their ancestors have done. And I just think that moment for me will always, always be one of the most powerful in
Mhm.
my life.
Yeah, because again, that is powerful to connect with the local community, and I guess your show does center on that. And it's in terms of the community voices and of course the local culture. How do you kind of think that through in terms of being able to, from conception to the actual thing that we see, on YouTube type?
Yeah. Well, St. Lucia, I have written about a lot.
Mm.
It helps one of my good friends who is Jamaican.
Mhm.
He actually does their PR. So I've been there quite a bit, and I I have met a lot of people from there and spoken to a lot, elders and young people and talked about, their community. And so it seemed like a good starting point because I knew so many stories
Yes.
from there. So, I kind of wrote down places that I wanted to highlight, things that I wanted to highlight. I wanted to talk about the fish fry that
Yeah.
has been happening for, millennia in Rodney Bay. Every Friday there's a DJ, there's barbecue. It's amazing, so I wanted to highlight that. I wanted to, Fonjon Libre and other stories, Coco St. Lucie, which we go to, which was, I remember when this woman who started Coco St. Lucie, it was out of her house. And I remember interviewing her when she was just making chocolate out of her house. And so to see that it had, she got the funding and she
Mhm.
built this amazing facility and she was offering people a chance to understand the bean to bar process, to be able to show that was really exciting because I had known her. So, when it comes to the next ones, because there will be more as soon as I can get the funding, it'll be, it's a combination of talking to people on island, my own stories, my own connections, research, and even just going beforehand and walking around talking
Yeah.
to people because I always say those where the best stories come from.
Mhm.
And those are the most interesting details about a destination is not what you're told to see, but what you uncover on your own.
Yeah, and I think I saw that show where you were making the chocolate,
No.
which I thought was, fantastic because we don't associate the region of the Caribbean as chocolate making when cocoa is grown there.
Yeah. I'm like, where did they grow cocoa in Switzerland?
Yes, or Belgian.
Or Belgium. It's delicious, but where's the cocoa plant? Show me.
Exactly, exactly, and I guess that's why, from your background as well, how does that again shape and influence the way the stories that you want to be able to tell as well?
Oh my gosh. Well, again, it's the stories my ancestors could never tell,
Right.
but also, talking to understanding us Caribbeans all we have a lot of the same
Yes.
mannerisms, a lot of the same upbringing. Our parents were brought up with British history, right? But then with this Caribbean twist is and our parents that came to Canada, our grandparents that came to Canada with these hopes and dreams of what they were promised and ultimately did or did not get.
Mhm.
I think that there is something relatable for other people within the community that, we can see ourselves, and I think there is something powerful and uplifting for, the Jamaican community when we can see ourselves in the media, in the stories that are being told, and I think for many, many years, I didn't see myself.
Yeah.
I I didn't know anyone else that was mixed,
Mhm.
definitely not,
No.
when I grew up, but when I was with family and I was with my Caribbean family, there was a comfort that I never quite understood as to why, and I don't want anyone else to feel like that.
Yeah.
I want people to know that your stories belong. Your stories are part of America as we, not just
Mhm.
like the US of A,
Yeah.
like the Caribbean and like everything that
Yes.
Bad Bunny mentioned, the
Yes.
Super Bowl, all of us, we are all our stories have contributed to our landscape here today. And I guess almost selfishly, it is my own search for belonging and my own longing for connection, my own storytelling of my family that has led me to continue to tell these stories. So hopefully no one else has to
Mhm.
say, you know, who am I and
Yes.
what is my role in life?
No, no, absolutely, because, I mean, that's just another example, as I sometimes say, it just we are now shining our light that allows somebody else to then see, "Okay, if that person can do it, and that is our story, I can do it too, and I can feel comfortable
Yes.
walking in that light, taking on that journey as well," right?
Absolutely. And I see people and Jamaicans will come up to me and say, I love seeing you on TV, and it's so good to see a Jamaican girl on there." And that
Yeah,
makes me so happy
yeah,
because I feel like, okay, I'm representing and I am showing you how much we matter
yes.
and and that we are making a difference.
Mhm.
And that is the ultimate.
Yeah, because it's not you don't know from what you're just doing because you just see here, these are the lights, the cameras, but you
Yeah.
don't see the audience at the end of the
No.
day.
And it is such a privilege, I think it is a privilege to be in people's homes, right?
Yes.
Because although I don't see it, but my face is on your TV screen and hopefully I'm saying something that resonates but also makes you feel that, okay, I like having this voice in my home. And
Mhm.
that's such a privilege and I don't take it lightly and I feel like I then when I do have those opportunities to be on screen or to speak, with you on these podcasts, that I am using it to amplify, this message of connection and strength and yeah, togetherness.
Yeah. No, no, absolutely, because it's just about belonging, and not
Yes.
only that, but our stories, our ancestors, what they lived through, what they've gone
Oh,
through, what are is something to be proud of, because here in Canada, I mean, growing up, going to school, you heard nothing,
absolutely
absolutely
not.
nothing of Caribbean history.
Nothing. Even Caribbeans don't know about
You
Caribbean
haven't
history.
nothing, absolutely nothing, and you're not made to feel as if you were part of the world,
Yes.
right?
You are other.
You're just something that's there and not really told about, and maybe you might be described in any one of your years of schooling, but hardly,
Yeah,
if ever.
exactly. And I think, Jamaica, obviously, you know, it isn't just a resort. My grandpa farmed there
Mm,
and my grandma taught, so she went to school there. My dad walked to school every day, in Jamaica, and my cousins are still there and they walk to school
yes.
and they live and exist, and I'm like, there is life here.
Yes.
And it is a life like you and me in a much warmer climate.
Mhm.
Uh,
Yes, yes.
but it is just this other, and it's this inability that people have to look beyond themselves.
Yes.
And I know I want to bring people beyond
Yeah.
that navel gazing. I once
Mhm.
heard someone coin it as beyond that themselves, and in learning about that, that's gonna perhaps give you perspective and from there empathy,
Yes.
because you are then gonna say, "Okay, this is not the only way.
Mhm.
My way is not the only way. I am then gonna understand you a little bit more, and you're
Yeah.
gonna understand me a little bit more." And then, hopefully that can deal with some of the conflict that we see day to day and, day to day in our own lives. And then, of course, on a bigger scale, ultimately. I mean, that's quite existential, but, it's let me just learn a little bit more. And especially in Canada right now, we're going to the Caribbean more because
Yes.
people are not going to the States.
No.
WestJet doesn't fly there anymore. Air Transit doesn't fly there anymore. And a lot of the world is actually not going to the States as much, and we are going down to the Caribbean. We now have a direct flight to Guadeloupe and Grenada, and that
Mhm.
started only in December,
Yeah.
like this past December. And people haven't heard of these islands. And, you know, some people go to Barbados, but mostly everyone goes to what they believe is their safe version of Jamaica.
Mhm.
And it's just not true.
No, there's a lot more there, and I guess with your show as well, you are giving the history that people can be able to see, even if they cannot do, let's say, family history, know down to however many generations behind.
Mhm.
But at least now your show gives them that opportunity to kind of have a glimpse into what could have been and for me to kinda understand for that, right? Like,
Yes.
that's the power of, I guess, your program in terms of travel media. And how do you think that it is very important to kind of, represent and to really shape the way that people can be able to view whichever island that you're having to showcase?
So I created this document called the Travel Deeper
Mhm.
document, which is also on the website,
Okay.
and it just helps people maybe prep ahead of
Yes.
time for where they're going. So maybe you follow an influencer from the island you're going to. Maybe you watch Beyond the Resort and learn a little bit of history. Maybe you find a cooking show on YouTube
Yeah.
or a podcast. My son loves this podcast called Culture Kids, and it is absolutely amazing. And they go all around the world and they meet different people in different places. And sometimes they make something or they go on a hot air balloon or something. And we listened to Dominican Republic one, and she talked about making La Bandera Dominicana. And so when we went to Dominican, my son said, first thing I'm gonna do is find a Bandera Dominicana. And so it was like he had listened to this podcast and he was ready and excited and he could tell you where it came from and why. And it's that enthusiasm that I think you get from traveling with
Mhm.
kids. But, you know, he found out that's where we were going and he wanted to learn about the place that he was going
Yes.
and what they ate and what they did. And I think if everyone goes with a little bit of insight, it allows you to understand the world a little bit more, and when you're there, one of my, top things I always say you should
Mhm.
do is do a cooking class because you learn so much through food, through preparation of food. Like Grenada, they have the oil down. We don't have that in Jamaica. We have other things,
Yes.
but, why oil down in Grenada? What is the history of it? What goes in it? What would
Mhm.
be an alternative and why? And it gives you the opportunity to really learn about the place that you're going and the differentiators
Right.
from other islands. So I always say, do a little bit of research before you go. Take a cooking class when you're
Yeah.
out there. Don't just go to Dun River Falls, which is gorgeous,
Yeah.
but it's packed. Like
Yes.
it's such a it's so touristy. But I challenge tourists to don't just show up and use all the
Yeah.
resources. Put in the time and effort to connect with community, but also to spend your money in the community. 85 cents of every dollar spent in the Caribbean leaves the Caribbean. How do you expect to exist on that? And you're saying, and like, of course, these people don't have the same economic, I don't know, wealth that
Yes.
they have in Canada, but that's because, North America is taking it all and continues to bleed them in any possible way. And I mean, I won't even go into climate
No.
change, but, so I think that, put your dollars in the community that you're going to so then they can continue to thrive and, you know, women give them economic autonomy, you know, young men. I think uh, you have to put money into the communities that you are visiting. You cannot just take. You wouldn't do that as if you're a decent human being.
Yeah.
You do a friend, it's a two-way relationship,
Mhm.
right?
No.
Make them your friend.
No, exactly. It's just a balance to know that it shouldn't just be all about extracting. We've
No.
had enough extraction within
Yes.
religion itself
Yes.
for centuries.
Yes. We're good. We're good.
Yes, we're done with that. So, Natalie, finally, as we come to a close with
Yes.
this episode, what would you like to leave the listeners in relation to not only Beyond the Resort, to look at in terms of being able to travel with, as you said, curiosity, to travel with respect, and of course, cultural awareness.
What would I like to leave? I think be intentional in your travel. Be intentional how you travel, when you travel, where you travel. Be respectful of the people, of the places, the communities that you are entering. Learn a little bit more about where you're going and realize that, get out of your main character energy.
Yes.
You were coming to someone else's home and respect their home as you would expect someone to respect your home.
Exactly. Well said. Thank you so much for coming on
Thank
to the podcast. This has been
you.
great. I'm sure we could have continued
Oh
a
my
little
gosh, I
long.
could talk to you for hours and hours and just rant
Yes.
for hours and hours.
Yes. But no, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Wendy.
You're welcome. Hoped you enjoyed this episode, and if you did, please make sure to like, follow, subscribe, and write a review for the episode wherever you listen to your podcast. Thank you.